Hey everyone, Steve from Backcountry Gallery here, and let's do some f2.8 myth busting. There are a couple of things that almost every photographer gets wrong when it comes to fast glass like f2.8 lenses, and I want to keep you out of that trap. In fact, see if you can spot the potential problem with the following scenario. I often get asked about gear for wildlife trips. People usually list their long lenses like a 200 to 600, 500 PF, 600 PF, whatever, and then they mention they're also bringing a 70 to 200 2.8 for low light use or to tame a busy background. Sounds good, right? Although you can potentially use something like a 70 to 200 2.8 or similar short, fast glass to drop your ISO or tame your background, it only works if you're filling the frame the same way you would have with longer glass, even if that longer glass is on the slow side. Let me prove it to you, and fair warning, this might just blow your mind. As a side note, throughout this video, I'm going to be mostly comparing using a 200mm f2.8 against a 600mm f6.3, since the 600-6.3 is one of the most common focal length and aperture combinations on the market. However, the lessons in this video fully apply to other focal length combinations as well, and you'll learn how to apply those as we go along. Let's start with depth of field. I took a shot with a 70 to 200 2.8 at 200mm and a 600 PF f6.3 from the same distance, and then I cropped the 200mm shot to match the field of view. Can you guess which image was shot at f2.8 based on the depth of field and background? Okay, do you have your answer? Here's the reveal in 3, 2, 1. Did you get it right? Let me know in the comments and be honest. Just for reference, here are the original images before I cropped the 70 to 200mm shot. Check out the actual depth of field here too. On the 600mm shot, we only get about to the number 4 or so on the little ruler before things really start to soften up. On the 200mm 2.8 shot, it's more like 8 or 10 on that little scale. So, counterintuitively, not only do you have more depth of field and a resulting busier background with the 200mm f2.8, but you also lose resolution from cropping. A fast lens doesn't always give you an edge. It also depends on your distance to the subject. Of course, if you move closer and fill the frame, the 200mm f2.8 can look amazing like you can see here. The bottom line with depth of field, focal length has as much impact on your depth of field as aperture, and that is the critical thing to remember. So what about noise in low light? Here's a low light setup with a 70 to 200 2.8 against the 600 6.3, both wide open. The 70 to 200 was at ISO 1000 and the 600mm was at ISO 5000. Once again, I cropped the 70 to 200 shot to the same field of view as the 600mm shot. I also resized the 600 6.3 image so it's the same pixel dimensions as the 70 to 200, allowing us to view comparative output. As you can see, they are close, with the image from the 600mm f6.3 actually showing less noise than the 200 2.8 shot. At first, this might not seem fair since at pixel level, the ISO 5000 shot obviously has way more noise. However, pixel level isn't how we use our images. If we output an image to a 16:24 print, we do it by resizing each image to the same output size, regardless of where they started from. Hence, we use comparative output. The bottom line is if you were to output both of these images to any particular size for either print or web, and then compare them side by side, the one from the 600mm would show slightly less noise every single time. Again, I want to stress, if you could fill the frame with the 70 to 200, you'd see that f2.8 advantage, but how often can you get that close with wildlife? If you're wondering how you're supposed to know this in the field, you just need a little photography math. For instance, with our 200mm lens cropped to a 600mm field of view, you're looking at a crop factor of 3x. So we use that information to determine what the final result will look like compared to having shot an actual 600mm lens. For depth of field, we simply multiply the f-stop we're using by 3. So the final cropped image looks like a 600mm that was stopped down to f8.4, and we saw that increased depth of field when we compare those images. For comparative output ISO, we don't multiply but instead use stops. With the 200mm to 600mm comparison, instead of ISO 1000, The output looks 3 stops worse, so more like ISO 8000. That's why our f6.3 lens had the ISO edge for comparative output against the 2.8 shot. As a side note, if you actually wanted to fill the frame the same way you would with a 600mm lens without any cropping, you'd need to be 3 times closer to your subject. Of course, as we get into longer f2.8 glass, things get better and we can actually use our photographic math tip to reveal how a 300-2.8 and a 400-2.8 would perform if cropped to a 600mm field of view. With the 300mm, it's a crop factor of 2x to get to a 600mm field of view, so it would have the same depth of field as a 600mm lens shot at f5.6. The comparative output ISO would look 2 stops worse than the ISO indicated by the camera, again, once you cropped in and looked at comparative output. So even a 300-2.8 only gives you a third of a stop benefit over a slower 600 f6.3 when the 300mm is once again cropped to a 600mm field of view. Jump to a 400-2.8 and you only have a 1.5x crop factor between it and the 600mm lens. So depth of field would look like a 600mm shot at f4.2, and comparative output ISO would only be 1 stop worse than what's indicated by the camera's ISO display. And again, I really want to stress that this is if you crop it to a 600mm field of view. So with a 400-2.8, you're pulling ahead of the slower 600mm f6.3 optic in terms of depth of field and noise, and it's all because you have greater magnification. In short, a faster lens can help, but it's got to be long enough to make a difference. Of course, even with the 300 and 400mm lenses, you're losing a lot of pixels, and how that impacts the shot will vary based on the ISO, your noise reduction strategies, the detail in the image itself, the sharpness of the lenses, the use of the final output images, and a few variables I'm sure I'm forgetting at the moment. As a side note, I'll be comparing a 400mm f2.8 to a 600 f4 in an upcoming video, so make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. You're not going to want to miss that one. Bottom line, short fast glass absolutely gives you an edge if you can fill the frame the way you want for the shot. However, if you need 500mm, 600mm or more, cropping from a shorter lens like a 70-200-2.8 or even a 135-1.8 only dumps pixels and offers no practical advantage, even if your longer lens is on the slower side. Now, if you learned something today, make sure you let me know with a like, comment, and subscribe. And I'd love it if you would share this video with your friends. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.